The rain fell hard on the city streets, washing away the day's heat but not the cold feeling in David's chest. He sat in his black car, watching water roll down the window, thinking about the wedding invitation in his jacket pocket. His ex-girlfriend was getting married in 2 weeks, and she had invited him. Not because she wanted him there but because she wanted to show him what he had lost. David pressed his forehead against the cool glass. 3 years ago he was just another guy trying to make it in the business world. Then his tech company sold for $2 billion and everything changed. Money came fast but people came faster. Everyone wanted something from him. His friends became business partners. His family became investors. And Sarah, the woman he thought he would marry, became someone who saw dollar signs when she looked at him. "You're not the same person anymore," she had said the night she left. "All you care about is money and work. I need someone who sees me, not someone who's always thinking about the next deal." Now she was marrying someone else. A teacher who made $40,000 a year and loved her for who she was. David knew this because he had hired someone to find out. He wasn't proud of it but he needed to know. The worst part wasn't that she was getting married. The worst part was that he had to go alone. Everyone would be there, all their old friends, people who knew their story. They would look at him with pity or judgment. The rich guy who lost the one good thing in his life because he cared more about money than love. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. "Sir, do you need me to find someone to accompany you to the wedding? I know several lovely women who would be happy to attend." David closed his eyes. Hired dates. That's what his life had become. Women who smiled pretty and said the right things because they were paid to. He was tired of fake smiles and empty conversations. He was tired of people who wanted his money but not him. He put the car in drive and pulled into traffic. The rain was getting worse and the streets were almost empty. He wasn't going home. He couldn't face his big empty house with its perfect furniture and no warmth. Instead, he drove through the city, past the fancy restaurants and expensive stores, into the parts of town where real people lived. That's when he saw her. She was standing under a broken streetlight, trying to stay dry under a piece of cardboard that was falling apart in the rain. Her clothes were old and worn, but she held herself with dignity. She wasn't begging or asking for help. She was just trying to survive another night. David had seen homeless people before. The city was full of them. But something about this woman made him stop. Maybe it was the way she protected a small bag like it held everything she owned. Maybe it was how she looked at the rain like it was just another problem to solve, not something to cry about. He pulled over and rolled down his window. "Excuse me," he called out. She looked at him with careful eyes. She was younger than he first thought, maybe 25 or 26. Pretty but not in the way the women in his world were pretty. She had real beauty, the kind that came from inside. "I'm not asking for money," she said, her voice strong despite the rain. "I know," David said. "But I have a question for you." She stepped closer but kept her distance. Smart girl. What kind of question? David took a deep breath. What he was about to ask was crazy. It made no sense. But nothing in his life made sense anymore. "How would you like to go to a wedding with me?" She stared at him like he had lost his mind. Maybe he had. "I'm serious," he said. "It's in 2 weeks. Nice hotel, good food, fancy clothes. I'll pay you for your time and you'll have a place to stay until then." "Why me?" she asked. David looked at her honest face, her careful eyes, her proud shoulders despite everything she was going through. "Because you're real," he said. The rain kept falling and she kept staring at him. David held his breath, waiting for her answer, knowing that his crazy plan might be the first honest thing he had done in years. The woman's name was Elena and she said yes. Not right away. First she asked questions. Good questions. Was this some kind of trick? What did he really want? Why couldn't he find a regular date? David answered honestly. He told her about Sarah's wedding, about feeling tired of fake people, about wanting someone real for once. He didn't mention the $2 billion or his company. He just said he had money and needed a date. "I'll think about it," Elena said. "The rain is getting worse," David pointed out. "At least let me give you a ride somewhere." Elena looked at her cardboard shelter, then at the warm, dry car. "Okay," she said. "But just a ride." She got in carefully, keeping her bag close. The car smelled like leather and expensive cologne, but David had turned the heat on, and Elena couldn't help but feel grateful for the warmth. "Where to?" David asked. "The shelter on 5th Street, Elena said. "If they have room." David knew about the shelter. His company had donated money there, though he had never visited. It was always full and people often had to sleep outside anyway. "What if they don't have room?" he asked. Elena shrugged. "Then I find somewhere else." David drove in silence, thinking. When they reached the shelter, there was a long line of people waiting in the rain. Elena sighed. Looks like they're full, she said. Come with me, David said suddenly. I have a hotel room. You can stay there tonight. Think about my offer. If you say no tomorrow, I'll give you some money and we'll call it even. Elena studied his face. Why are you being nice to me? Maybe because no one's been nice to me in a long time, David said. It was true. Everyone wanted something from him now. His own mother asked for money every time she called. His friends invited him to parties but only talked about business. Even his barber tried to sell him investment ideas. Elena must have seen something honest in his eyes because she nodded. Okay. One night. The hotel was nice but not too fancy. David had learned that showing off his wealth right away scared people. He got Elena her own room and gave her his business card. Call me tomorrow, he said. Whatever you decide is fine. Elena took the card but didn't look at it. What's your name? David, he said. David Chin. Thank you, David, she said. For the room. And for treating me like a person. David went to his own room thinking about what she had said. When was the last time someone had thanked him for treating them like a person? When had that become something special? He ordered room service and ate alone like always. Then he called his assistant. Janet, I need you to cancel my meetings for tomorrow. And maybe for the next few days. Sir? Is everything all right? I'm not sure, David said. But I think I might be doing something right for once. The next morning Elena called. She had looked up his business card and found out who he really was. David Chin, tech billionaire, one of the richest men under 35 in the country. Why didn't you tell me? She asked when they met for breakfast. Because it changes things, David said. People act different when they know. Elena stirred her coffee. It does change things. But not the way you think. What do you mean? I mean, I understand now why you need to hire a date. And why you picked someone like me. David felt his stomach drop. Elena, I didn't. You want someone who can't hurt you, she said. Someone who doesn't run in your circles. Someone who can't use your feelings against you later. She was right, and David hated that she was right. So, he asked, will you still do it? Elena looked at him for a long time. Yes, she said. But not for the reasons you think. What reasons? Because I think you need this more than you know. And because I think you might actually be a good person under all that money. David felt something strange in his chest. Hope maybe. Or fear. He couldn't tell the difference anymore. There's something else, Elena said. If I'm going to be your date, I want to know your real story. Not the rich guy story. The real one. David looked at this woman who had been living on the streets but still had more dignity than most people he knew. She was asking him to be honest. When was the last time anyone had asked him that? Okay, he said. But it's not a very nice story. The real ones never are, Elena said. David told Elena his story over the next few days. Not all at once, but in pieces like putting together a puzzle. He grew up poor in a small apartment with his mother. His father left when David was 7, and his mother worked 2 jobs to pay the bills. David was smart, good with computers, and he worked hard in school because he wanted to give his mother a better life. She used to fall asleep at the kitchen table doing her accounting work, David said. They were walking through the city, Elena wearing new clothes that David had bought her. Simple clothes, nothing fancy but clean and warm. I promised myself I would make enough money so she would never have to work so hard again. Did you? Elena asked. Yeah, David said. I bought her a house. A nice one. With a garden like she always wanted. She must be proud, Elena said. David was quiet for a moment. She is. But she's also different now. She used to hug me when I came home from school. Now she shakes my hand like I'm a business partner. Elena understood. Money changed everything, even love. What about Sarah? Elena asked. Your ex-girlfriend. How did you meet her? David smiled, but it was a sad smile. College. She was studying art and I was studying computer science. She used to paint these beautiful pictures of ordinary things. A coffee cup. A tree. A person reading on a bench. She made everything look special. What happened? I started my company while we were dating. At first, it was just me and 2 friends working out of a garage. Sarah used to bring us food and help with the website design. She believed in what we were doing. They stopped at a traffic light. Elena watched David's face as he talked. Then the company grew. I had to work more hours. Travel more. Sarah said she understood. She said she was proud of me. But I could see her pulling away. Did you try to fix it? I thought I was, David said. I bought her things. Expensive things. A new car, jewelry, a studio apartment so she could paint. But she didn't want those things. She wanted me to come home for dinner. She wanted me to remember her birthday without my assistant reminding me. She wanted me to look at her paintings and really see them, not just say they were nice while I checked my phone. Elena could picture it. The successful man who thought money could fix everything, and the woman who just wanted to be loved. The night she left, we were supposed to go to her art show. She had been working on it for months. But I had a meeting with investors that ran late. I showed up 3 hours later with flowers and apologies. What did she say? She said the flowers were beautiful and expensive, but she would have rather had me there on time with nothing. She said I had become someone who saw everything as a transaction. Even love. They walked in silence for a while. Elena thought about her own life, about the mistakes that had led her to the streets. Everyone had a story. Why did you hire someone to investigate her new boyfriend? Elena asked. David looked surprised. How did you? You mentioned it the first night. You said you knew he was a teacher who made $40,000 a year. David felt embarrassed. I needed to know if she was happy. If she was better off without me. And? She is, David said quietly. He coaches Little League on weekends. He goes to all her art shows. He cooks dinner with her every night. He loves her the way I should have loved her. Elena stopped walking. David, look at me. He turned to face her. You're not a bad person because you worked hard. You're not a bad person because you made money. You made mistakes, but you're trying to learn from them. How do you know? Because you picked me, Elena said. You could have hired a professional. Someone who would tell you what you wanted to hear and make you feel better about yourself. Instead, you picked someone who would tell you the truth. David stared at her. Is that what you think you're doing? I think I'm helping you remember who you used to be, Elena said. Before the money. Before the fear. Before you forgot that people can love you for who you are, not what you have. That night, David lay in his hotel bed thinking about what Elena had said. She was right about some things, but she didn't know the whole truth. She didn't know that he had been afraid for so long that he had forgotten how to be anything else. Tomorrow they would start preparing for the wedding. Elena would need a dress and David would need courage. Because seeing Sarah again would either prove that he had grown as a person, or show him that he was still the same man who had lost the best thing in his life because he was too scared to be real. Shopping for a wedding dress was harder than David expected. Not because of the money, but because Elena refused to let him buy her anything too expensive. I'm not going to this wedding to show off, she said, standing in front of a mirror in a simple blue dress. I'm going to help you get through it. The saleswoman kept bringing more expensive options. Silk dresses with beading, designer gowns that cost more than most people made in a month. Elena said no to all of them. This one is perfect, she said, smoothing down the blue dress. It was pretty but simple, the kind of dress that looked good without trying too hard. Are you sure? David asked. We can afford. David, Elena said, turning to face him. I'm not your ex-girlfriend. I don't need expensive things to feel good about myself. It was a gentle reminder, but it hit David hard. Sarah had never asked for expensive things either. He had bought them for her because he thought that's what people did when they loved someone. Show them how much money you would spend on them. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean. I know what you meant, Elena said. You want to take care of me. That's nice. But taking care of someone doesn't always mean spending money on them. David bought the blue dress and a pair of simple shoes. Elena picked out a small handbag and refused to let him buy her jewelry. I have earrings, she said. My grandmother's. They're the only things I have left from before. David wanted to ask what before meant, but he could see that Elena wasn't ready to tell that story yet. Everyone had secrets. The next week passed quickly. David and Elena spent time together every day, walking around the city, eating at small restaurants, talking about everything except the wedding. David learned that Elena had been a teacher before she lost her job. She had studied literature in college and loved books more than anything. What's your favorite book? David asked one evening. They were sitting in a park watching people walk by. Pride and Prejudice, Elena said without hesitation. David laughed. Really? That's so. What? Girly? Elena raised an eyebrow. No, I was going to say romantic. I didn't think you were the romantic type. What type did you think I was? David thought about it. Tough. Practical. Someone who doesn't believe in fairy tales. I am tough and practical, Elena said. But I still believe in love. Real love. The kind where people see each other clearly and choose to stay anyway. Like Elizabeth and Darcy? Exactly. He was rich and proud. She was poor and stubborn. They both had to change before they could be together. But they changed because they wanted to be better people, not because they wanted to impress each other. David understood. You think Sarah and I were like that? I think you both wanted to love each other, but you didn't know how. You thought money could fix everything. She thought love should be easy. What do you think love should be? Elena was quiet for a moment. I think love should be honest, and brave, and willing to work when things get hard. David looked at her profile in the fading light. You sound like you know from experience. I do, Elena said. But that's a story for another day. The night before the wedding, David couldn't sleep. He paced around his hotel room thinking about seeing Sarah again. What would he say to her? How would he act? Would she think he was still the same selfish person who had hurt her? There was a knock on his door. Elena stood in the hallway wearing pajamas and a robe the hotel had provided. Can't sleep either? She asked. No, David said. Come in. They sat on the couch in David's suite. Elena had brought tea from her room. Are you nervous about tomorrow? She asked. Terrified, David admitted. What if she looks at me and sees the same person who disappointed her? What if nothing has changed? David, something has changed, Elena said. You're asking different questions now. 3 years ago, you would have been worried about what people thought of your date or your clothes or your car. Now you're worried about whether you're a good person. Maybe I'm just better at hiding what I really care about. Elena shook her head. No, you're not. You're terrible at hiding things. That's why I agreed to help you. What do you mean? I mean you're honest about being scared. You're honest about your mistakes. You're honest about wanting to be better. That's not something a truly selfish person can fake. David felt that strange feeling in his chest again. Hope mixed with fear. What if I mess this up? He asked. Then you mess it up, Elena said. But you'll mess it up as yourself, not as someone you think you should be. That's better than getting it right for the wrong reasons. David looked at this woman who had been living on the streets a few weeks ago but somehow had more wisdom than anyone he knew. How did you get so smart about people? Elena smiled sadly. I learned the hard way. Just like you. The wedding was beautiful. Sarah looked happy, and her new husband looked at her like she was the most wonderful thing in the world. David felt a sharp pain in his chest when he saw them together, but it wasn't jealousy. It was regret mixed with something else. Relief maybe. Or peace. Elena held his arm as they walked into the reception. She wore the blue dress and her grandmother's earrings, and David thought she looked more beautiful than any of the women in expensive gowns. You okay? She whispered. Yeah, David said, and he meant it. I think I am. They found their table. David recognized some of the people from his college days, but they seemed different now. Older, more settled. They had families and careers that didn't revolve around making money. They looked happy in a way David had forgotten was possible. David? A woman's voice behind him. I can't believe you came. David turned around. It was Sarah. She looked the same but different. More confident. More at peace. Sarah? David said, standing up. Congratulations. You look beautiful. Thank you, Sarah said. She looked at Elena with curiosity. I'm Sarah, the bride. Elena said, shaking Sarah's hand. Congratulations on your wedding. Thank you, Sarah said. She looked back at David. Can I talk to you for a minute? Alone. David looked at Elena, who nodded. I'll be right here, she said. Sarah led David to a quiet corner of the reception hall. I wasn't sure you would come, she said. I wasn't sure either, David admitted. You look different, Sarah said. Good different. So do you? Happy different. Sarah smiled. I'm happy. Really happy. But I wanted to talk to you because I think I owe you an apology. David was surprised. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do, Sarah said. I left you when things got hard. I thought love was supposed to be easy, and when it wasn't, I blamed you for everything. But relationships take work from both people. I should have fought for us instead of just walking away. David felt tears in his eyes. Sarah, you don't have to. Let me finish, Sarah said. I was angry at you for a long time. For caring more about work than about me. For thinking money could fix everything. But I never told you how I felt. I just got more and more resentful until I couldn't see the good in you anymore. You were right to leave, David said quietly. I wasn't ready to be the person you needed. Maybe, Sarah said. But I wasn't ready to be the person you needed either. We were both young and scared and trying to figure out who we were. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Your date seems nice, Sarah said. She's different from the women you used to date. How so? She looks at you like she sees you, not your bank account. And she looks at me like she's not threatened by me. That takes confidence. David looked across the room at Elena, who was talking to an older couple at their table. She was laughing at something the man had said, and her whole face lit up. She is confident, David said. She's also kind and smart and honest. She's helping me remember who I used to be. Good, Sarah said. Because the David I fell in love with was worth remembering. Sarah hugged him then and David hugged her back. It wasn't romantic or painful. It was the hug of two people who had loved each other and learned from their mistakes and were ready to move forward. Be happy, David, Sarah said. You deserve it. You too, David said. You really do look happy. Sarah went back to her husband and David went back to Elena. She was still talking to the older couple, but she looked up when David sat down. Everything okay? She asked. Everything's good, David said. Really good. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of music and dancing and laughter. David danced with Elena and she was light on her feet and easy to talk to. He didn't think about business or money or anything except the feeling of her hand in his and the sound of her laugh. Near the end of the night they stepped outside for some air. The night was warm and stars were visible despite the city lights. Thank you, David said. For what? For coming with me. For helping me get through this. For being yourself. Elena smiled. Thank you for picking me. This was the nicest thing anyone has done for me in a long time. David felt something shift inside him. Looking at Elena in the starlight, he realized that somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about Sarah's wedding. It had become about Elena. About the way she made him feel like himself again. About the way she saw through his money and his fear to the person he really was. But Elena was looking at him strangely, like she was seeing something that worried her. David, she said carefully, you know this isn't real, right? This whole thing between us. It's just for the wedding. David felt his heart sink. I know, he said. Of course I know. But as they drove back to the hotel in silence, David realized that he didn't know anything at all. He had hired Elena to be his fake date, but his feelings for her were becoming very real. And that terrified him more than any business deal ever had. The next morning, David woke up with a hollow feeling in his chest. The wedding was over. Elena had done what he had paid her to do. Now she would go back to her life and he would go back to his, and they would both pretend that the past few weeks hadn't meant anything. Except they had meant something. At least to David. He was having breakfast alone in the hotel restaurant when Elena appeared. She had packed her things and was ready to leave. I wanted to say goodbye, she said, sitting across from him. You don't have to go, David said quickly. I mean, you can stay in the hotel for a while. Until you figure out what you want to do next. Elena shook her head. That's not a good idea. Why not? Elena looked at him with kind but firm eyes. Because you're starting to feel something for me and I can't let you do that. David felt his face flush. Elena, David, listen to me. I'm not the right person for you. We're from different worlds. This whole thing was pretend. It was never supposed to be real. But it felt real, David said quietly. I know, Elena said. It felt real to me too. That's why I have to go. David stared at her. You felt it too? Elena sighed. Of course I did. You're a good man, David. You're kind and funny and you're trying to be better than you were. But I'm not the woman you think I am. What do you mean? Elena was quiet for a long moment. I haven't been completely honest with you about my life. About how I ended up on the streets. David felt his stomach tighten. Tell me. I used to be married, Elena said. To a man I loved very much. We had a good life. A house, jobs we liked, plans for the future. But my husband got sick. Cancer. We spent everything we had on medical bills and it still wasn't enough. David reached across the table for her hand, but Elena pulled away. When he died, I lost everything. The house, the medical debt, even my job because I had taken too much time off to take care of him. I've been on the streets for 8 months. Elena, I'm so sorry, David said. But that doesn't change how I feel about you. Yes, it does, Elena said. Because I didn't tell you the whole truth. My husband's name was James and he was a good man. But he wasn't just sick. He was addicted to his pain medication. The cancer was real, but the addiction made everything worse. David waited for her to continue. I enabled him, Elena said. I thought I was helping him manage his pain, but I was really helping him hide his addiction. When he died, it wasn't just from cancer. It was from an overdose. Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. I killed my husband by trying to save him. I'm not the strong, wise woman you think I am. I'm someone who made terrible choices and lost everything because of them. David felt his heart breaking for her. Elena, that's not your fault. Isn't it? Elena asked. I knew he was taking too many pills. I knew he was lying to his doctors. I knew he was in danger. But I was so scared of losing him that I helped him destroy himself. You were trying to help someone you loved, David said. That's not the same as hurting them. Tell that to James, Elena said bitterly. Oh wait, you can't. Because he's dead. David had never heard Elena sound so angry and hurt. He wanted to hold her, to tell her that she wasn't responsible for her husband's death. But he could see that she had been carrying this guilt for months, and nothing he said would make it go away easily. Is that why you were living on the streets? David asked. Because you felt like you deserved to be punished? Elena nodded. I had family who would have helped me. Friends who offered. But I couldn't accept their help. I felt like I needed to suffer for what I had done. And then I came along, David said. Another rich man who thought money could fix everything. No, Elena said firmly. You're not like that. You're nothing like that. But I am like something. I'm like someone who destroys the people she loves. And I won't do that to you. Elena stood up from the table. Thank you for everything, David. For treating me with respect. For making me feel human again. For showing me that there are still good people in the world. But this is goodbye. David watched her walk away, and every instinct told him to follow her. But he stayed in his chair, thinking about what she had said. Elena thought she was protecting him by leaving. She thought she was dangerous to the people she loved. But David had seen her for weeks now. He had seen her kindness, her strength, her honesty. He had seen the way she talked to strangers and helped other people even when she had nothing. He had seen the way she looked at the world with hope despite everything she had lost. Elena wasn't dangerous. She was scared. And David was scared too. But maybe they could be scared together. David didn't follow Elena immediately. Instead, he sat in the hotel restaurant thinking about everything she had told him. Her husband's death, her guilt, her belief that she was dangerous to the people she loved. He thought about his own guilt. How he had lost Sarah because he was too afraid to be vulnerable. How he had spent 3 years hiding behind his money instead of dealing with his feelings. How he had hired Elena because he thought she couldn't hurt him, only to discover that the possibility of losing her hurt more than anything. After an hour, David made a decision. He went to his room, packed his things, and checked out of the hotel. But instead of going home, he drove to the part of the city where he had first met Elena. If she was determined to punish herself, she would probably go back to the streets. It took him 2 days to find her. She was staying at a different shelter, one across town from where she had been before. David parked outside and waited. He didn't want to embarrass her by going inside, but he needed to see her. When Elena came out, she looked tired and sad. She had given back the clothes David had bought her and was wearing her old things again. But she still held herself with dignity, still looked at the world with clear eyes. David got out of his car and walked over to her. Hi, he said. Elena looked surprised and then worried. David, what are you doing here? I came to find you. Why? Because I think you're wrong about yourself. And I think I can prove it. Elena shook her head. David, I told you. You told me you think you're dangerous to people you love. But I don't think that's true. I think you're afraid of being loved because you think you don't deserve it. Those are the same thing, Elena said. No, they're not, David said. Come with me. I want to show you something. Elena hesitated. David, this isn't a good idea. Maybe not, David said. But I'm asking you to trust me. One more time. Elena looked at him for a long moment. Where are we going? To meet someone who can tell you the truth about yourself better than I can. They drove in silence to a small house in a quiet neighborhood. David parked in the driveway and turned to Elena. This is my mother's house, he said. I called her yesterday and told her about you. She wants to meet you. Elena looked panicked. David, no. I can't meet your mother. Not like this. Like what? Like someone you're dating. Like someone important to you. It's not fair to her or to you. Elena, my mother has been asking me for 3 years when I was going to bring home a woman who wasn't just after my money. She wants to meet the person who made me smile again. Before Elena could respond, the front door opened and a small woman with David's eyes came out. She was wearing a garden apron and had soil on her hands. David, she said, hugging him. I was wondering when you would get here. Mom, this is Elena, David said. Elena, this is my mother, Linda. Linda looked at Elena with the same careful, kind eyes that David had. Hello, Elena. I'm so glad to finally meet you. Elena shook Linda's hand. Hello, Mrs. Chin. It's nice to meet you too. Call me Linda, David's mother said. Come inside. I made tea. Linda's house was small and comfortable. Nothing like the mansion David had bought her, but warm and full of life. There were books everywhere, plants on every windowsill, and pictures of David at different ages covering the walls. David told me you're a teacher, Linda said as they sat in the living room. I was, Elena said. I'm not working right now. What did you teach? 5th grade. English and reading. Linda's face lit up. I was a teacher too. 2nd grade. I always said 5th grade teachers were the heroes because you get the kids right when they're starting to think they're too cool for school. Elena smiled for the first time since David had found her. That's exactly right. They're still young enough to get excited about books, but old enough to understand complex stories. What was your favorite book to teach? Linda asked. Bridge to Terabithia, Elena said. The kids always cried at the end, but they understood that losing someone you love doesn't mean you stop loving them. Linda nodded knowingly. That's a hard lesson for anyone to learn. David watched his mother and Elena talk about books and teaching and kids. He could see Elena relaxing, becoming herself again. This was who she really was. Not someone who destroyed the people she loved, but someone who cared about children and literature and helping people learn. After a while, Linda asked if Elena wanted to see her garden. They went outside, leaving David alone in the living room. He could hear them talking through the open window. David says you've been through a hard time, Linda said gently. Yes, Elena said. I lost my husband last year. I'm sorry, Linda said. That must have been very difficult. It was. It still is. But that's not the worst part. David moved closer to the window, not to spy but because he wanted to understand what Elena was feeling. What's the worst part? Linda asked. I think I failed him, Elena said. I think I could have saved him if I had been stronger. Or smarter. Or braver. Can I tell you something? Linda said. When David's father left us, I thought it was my fault. I thought if I had been a better wife or prettier or more interesting, he would have stayed. What changed your mind? Time, Linda said. And watching David grow up. I realized that some people leave not because of who you are, but because of who they are. And some people get sick not because you failed them, but because sickness doesn't care how much you love someone. David heard Elena crying softly. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, Linda continued. And you can't heal someone by taking on their pain. All you can do is love them while you have them and forgive yourself for being human. How do you know all this? Elena asked. Because I spent 10 years punishing myself for my husband leaving. And then I watched my son spend 3 years punishing himself for his relationship ending. Pain makes us think we're protecting other people by staying away from them. But really we're just protecting ourselves from being hurt again. David felt his eyes fill with tears. His mother was right. He had been protecting himself just like Elena was protecting herself now. David is a good man, Linda said. But he's been afraid for a long time. You helped him remember how to be brave. Don't you think you deserve the same chance? When Elena and Linda came back inside, Elena's eyes were red but she looked calmer. Thank you, Elena said to Linda. For the tea and the talk. And for raising such a good son. Thank you for reminding him who he is, Linda said. She hugged Elena like she was family. You're welcome here anytime. On the drive back to the city, Elena was quiet for a long time. Your mother is very wise, she finally said. She learned the hard way, David said. Like both of us. David, I need to tell you something, Elena said. I'm scared. Of what? Of this. Of you. Of the way I feel when I'm with you. I haven't felt this way since James and it scares me because I know how much it hurts to lose someone you love. David pulled over and turned to face her. Elena, I can't promise that we won't hurt each other. People who love each other sometimes do. But I can promise that I won't leave you because things get hard. And I won't try to fix you with money or gifts or anything except honesty. Elena looked at him with tears in her eyes. What if I'm not ready? What if I need time? Then we'll take time, David said. I'm not going anywhere. Elena nodded slowly. Okay. But I have conditions. What kind of conditions? I want to get back on my feet first. Get a job, find a place to live. I want to be with you because I choose to, not because I need to. That makes sense, David said. And I want to go slow. No rushing into anything. No big gestures or expensive gifts. Just us. Getting to know each other as real people. I can do that, David said. Elena smiled through her tears. Really? Really, David said. But I have one condition too. What? Let me help you find a job. Not with money but with connections. I know people who run schools. Good people who care more about teaching than about budgets. Elena thought about it. Okay. But I get the job on my own merit, not because I'm dating you. Deal? David said. They shook hands like business partners, but they were both smiling. It wasn't the romantic movie moment David had imagined, but it was better. It was real. 3 months later, Elena started her new job at Roosevelt Elementary School. David had made the introduction, but Elena got the job because the principal was impressed by her experience and her passion for teaching. David helped Elena find a small apartment near the school. Not fancy but clean and safe in hers. She insisted on paying her own rent, even though it meant living on a tight budget. I need to know I can take care of myself, she explained. Not because I don't trust you, but because I need to trust myself. David understood. He had learned a lot about independence in the past few months too. For the first time in years he wasn't working 18-hour days. He had hired better managers and learned to delegate. He spent his evenings reading books Elena recommended and his weekends exploring parts of the city he had never seen before. They saw each other twice a week. Sometimes for dinner at small restaurants, sometimes for walks in the park, sometimes just to sit in Elena's apartment and talk. David learned about Elena's childhood, her dreams of being a writer, her love of old movies. Elena learned about David's fears, his hopes, his struggle to find meaning beyond making money. Do you miss it? Elena asked one evening. They were cooking dinner together in her tiny kitchen. The excitement of big business deals? Sometimes, David admitted. But I don't miss the stress. Or the feeling that nothing I did was ever enough. What do you want to do now? David had been thinking about this question for weeks. I want to use my money for something that matters. Maybe start a foundation. Help people who are in situations like you were in? Elena smiled. That sounds perfect for you. You think so? I know so. You have a good heart, David. You just forgot how to use it for a while. That night, as David drove home to his empty house, he realized something. He was happy. Not the fake happiness that came from closing a big deal or buying something expensive, but real happiness. The kind that came from knowing someone and being known by them. His phone rang as he pulled into his driveway. It was Elena. Hi, he said. Did I forget something? No, Elena said. I just wanted to hear your voice before I went to sleep. David felt warmth spread through his chest. How was your day? Good. One of my students wrote a story about a dragon who was afraid of fire. It reminded me of us. How so? The dragon thought his fire was dangerous, so he never used it. But then he met a princess who wasn't afraid of getting burned. She helped him realize that his fire could be beautiful instead of scary. David smiled. Am I the dragon or the princess in this story? We both are, Elena said. We're both afraid of our own power to hurt people. But maybe together we can be brave enough to try. They talked for another hour about Elena's students, David's foundation plans, and a book they were both reading. It was an ordinary conversation, but it felt extraordinary to David. This was what he had been missing all those years. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but simple connection with someone who knew him and cared about him anyway. Elena? David said before they hung up. Yeah. I love you. There was silence on the other end of the phone. David held his breath, wondering if he had said it too soon. I love you too, Elena said quietly. That scares me, but I love you too. It scares me too, David said. But I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions for me. Me too, Elena said. Good night, David. Good night, Elena. The next morning, David woke up with a strange feeling. It took him a moment to identify it. He felt light, like a weight he had been carrying for years had finally been lifted. He was in love and he was loved back. It was as simple and as complicated as that. David went to work with more energy than he had felt in months. He had meetings about his foundation, lunch with his accountant to discuss charitable giving, and a phone call with a journalist who wanted to write about his career change. What made you decide to step back from active business? The journalist asked. I realized that making money isn't the same as making a life, David said. I spent so many years trying to be successful that I forgot to be happy. What changed your mind? David thought about the night he met Elena, standing in the rain with her dignity intact despite having lost everything. I met someone who reminded me what really matters, David said. Not someone who impressed me with what they had, but someone who impressed me with who they were. That evening, David went to Elena's apartment for dinner. She was grading papers at her kitchen table when he arrived. How were the dragons today? David asked, kissing her cheek. Breathing fire all over their math homework, Elena said. But in a good way. They cooked together and ate by candlelight, not because it was romantic but because Elena's overhead light had burned out and they kept forgetting to replace it. They talked about their days, their plans for the weekend, Elena's idea for a school reading program that David might be able to help fund. It was a perfectly ordinary evening, and David had never been happier. After dinner, they sat on Elena's small couch reading different books but enjoying each other's company. David looked up from his book and watched Elena read. She had a small frown of concentration and was taking notes in the margins. "What are you reading?" he asked. "A book about grief counseling," Elena said. "I'm thinking about going back to school to get certified. Some of my students are dealing with loss and I want to be able to help them better." David felt a surge of admiration for this woman who had turned her own pain into a way to help others. "That's a beautiful idea," he said. "You think so? It would mean more school, more debt. I'd have to keep teaching during the day and take classes at night." "I think you'd be amazing at it," David said. "And if you need help with tuition." Elena held up her hand. "Let me do this myself first. If I need help later, I'll ask." David nodded. He was learning that sometimes loving someone meant letting them struggle, letting them find their own strength instead of trying to solve their problems with money. "Elena?" David said. Are you happy?" Elena looked up from her book and smiled. "Yes," she said. "For the first time in a long time, I'm really happy." David felt that lightness in his chest again. This was what love was supposed to feel like. Not desperate or anxious or possessive, but peaceful and strong and full of possibility. 6 months after Elena started teaching, David's foundation was officially launched. The Chin Foundation focused on helping people transition out of homelessness by providing job training, temporary housing, and mental health support. Elena attended the launch party, wearing the same blue dress she had worn to Sarah's wedding. David had offered to buy her something new, but she insisted she loved the blue dress and didn't need anything else. "Besides," she said, "this dress has good memories." The party was held at a nice hotel but not the fanciest one in the city. David had learned that throwing expensive parties to help poor people sent the wrong message. Instead, he kept the costs low and invited people who actually worked with homeless populations. Social workers, shelter directors, other nonprofit leaders. "This is amazing," Elena said, looking around at the crowd of people who had dedicated their lives to helping others. "You did this." "We did this," David corrected. "I never would have thought of it if I hadn't met you." Elena squeezed his hand. "I'm proud of you." During his speech, David talked about how the foundation got started. "A year ago, I thought I understood what success looked like," he said. "I thought it was about accumulating wealth and power. But then I met someone who showed me a different kind of success. The success that comes from resilience, dignity, and the courage to help others even when you need help yourself." David looked at Elena in the audience. She was crying but smiling too. "The people we're here to help aren't broken," David continued. "They're not charity cases or statistics. They're human beings who have faced challenges that could happen to any of us. They deserve our respect, not our pity. And they have wisdom to offer us, if we're humble enough to listen." After the party, David and Elena walked through the city. It was a warm spring night, and the streets were full of people enjoying the weather. "Can I tell you something?" Elena said. "Always. When I was living on the streets, I used to walk past buildings like that hotel and think that the people inside were living in a completely different world. Like they were a different species than me. And now I know we're all just people trying to figure out how to be happy and how to help each other. The circumstances are different, but the feelings are the same." David nodded. "I used to think money made me different from everyone else. Better, somehow. But really it just made me lonelier." They stopped at a bench in a small park and sat down. The city lights twinkled around them, and Elena leaned against David's shoulder. "David?" Elena said. "Yeah. I've been thinking about something." "What?" "I want to tell my husband's family about you. About us. I haven't talked to them since the funeral, but I think it's time." David felt a flutter of nervousness. "Are you sure you're ready for that?" "I think so. They loved James, but they also knew about his addiction. They might understand better than I thought they would." "What will you tell them?" "That I'm learning to live again. That I'm learning to forgive myself. That I met someone who makes me want to be brave." David kissed the top of her head. "I'm scared to meet them." "Why?" "Because they'll know him in ways I never will. They'll always be able to compare me to him." Elena sat up and looked at David seriously. "David, I'm not trying to replace James with you. What I had with him was beautiful and real, and it ended tragically. What I have with you is also beautiful and real, but it's completely different. How is it different? With James, I felt like I needed to take care of him. Protect him. Fix him. With you, I feel like we take care of each other. We're partners, not patient and caregiver. David understood. You mean we're both whole people who choose to be together instead of broken people trying to complete each other? Exactly, Elena said. That's healthier. It's what James and I should have had, but we were too young and scared to know how. A few weeks later, Elena called James's parents. They lived 2 hours away and had been hoping to hear from her. They invited Elena and David for dinner. They want to meet you, Elena told David. James's mom said any man who could make me laugh again must be pretty special. She said that? She did. She also said James would want me to be happy. The drive to James's parents' house was quiet. David was nervous and Elena was lost in memories. But when they arrived, James's parents welcomed them both with warmth and kindness. You look good, Elena, James's father said, hugging her. Really good. Healthy. I feel good, Elena said. For the first time in a long time. Over dinner, David learned about James. He had been a high school English teacher who coached debate team and wrote poetry in his spare time. He had been funny and generous and deeply loved by his students and family. He would have liked you, James's mother told David. He always said Elena deserved someone who could keep up with her mind. She's definitely smarter than me, David said. But you're smart enough to know that, James's father said with a smile. That's what matters. Later, when Elena and James's mother were looking at photo albums, James's father took David aside. Elena blames herself for what happened to James, he said quietly. But we never blamed her. James was sick and addiction is a disease. Elena tried to help him, but no one could have saved him except himself. She's told me about the guilt she carries, David said. Good. That means she trusts you. But I want you to know something. Elena is not fragile. She's been through hell and came out stronger. Don't treat her like she might break. I won't, David promised. And don't try to erase James from her life. He'll always be part of her story. If you can accept that, you'll be fine. David nodded. I can accept that. Driving home, Elena was quiet again. What are you thinking about? David asked. How strange life is, Elena said. A year ago I thought my story was over. I thought I would never be happy again. But here I am, in love with someone wonderful, doing work I care about, feeling hopeful about the future. Do you think James would approve? Elena smiled. I think he'd be relieved that I finally stopped punishing myself. And I think he'd like you. You're both good men who care about making the world better. I hope I get to live up to that, David said. You already are, Elena said. 1 year after David first saw Elena standing in the rain, he knew he wanted to ask her to marry him. Not because he was afraid of losing her, but because he couldn't imagine building a future with anyone else. The problem was finding the right way to ask. Elena didn't like expensive things or grand gestures. She valued meaning over money, substance over show. David thought about proposing at a fancy restaurant or during a romantic vacation, but none of that felt right. Instead, he decided to ask her in the place where they had first really talked, the small park where they used to walk during those first weeks of getting to know each other. But first he needed to buy a ring. David had learned enough about Elena to know that she wouldn't want a huge diamond or something that cost more than most people made in a year. He wanted something beautiful but simple, something that reflected who she was. He went to a small jewelry store recommended by his mother, not one of the famous expensive places downtown. The owner was an older woman who asked about Elena before showing David any rings. Tell me about her, she said. She's a teacher, David said. She's kind and smart and strong. She's been through some hard times, but she uses those experiences to help other people. She doesn't care about money or status. She cares about being real. The woman nodded and brought out a tray of rings. They were all beautiful, but one caught David's eye immediately. It was a simple band with a single diamond, elegant but not flashy. That one, David said. Good choice, the woman said. It's beautiful without being showy. Classic without being boring. It's the kind of ring that gets more beautiful with time. Like the woman who'll wear it, David said. The day David planned to propose, Elena was running late. She had stayed after school to help a student with a reading problem, and then stopped by the grocery store and then got caught in traffic. I'm sorry, she said when she finally met David at the park. It's been one of those days. It's okay, David said. We have time. They walked their usual path through the park, talking about Elena's students and David's foundation work. David kept touching the ring box in his pocket, waiting for the right moment. But as they walked and talked, David realized that there was no perfect moment. There was just this. Elena laughing at something he said, Elena stopping to pet a dog, Elena picking up a piece of trash and throwing it away without thinking about it. This was who she was, and this was why he loved her. They sat on their favorite bench, the same one where they had talked the night of the foundation launch. Elena, David said. Mem? She was watching some kids play on the playground across from them. Look at me. Elena turned to face him, and David took out the ring box. Oh, Elena said softly. I know we've talked about taking things slow, David said. And I know you need to be independent and strong on your own. But Elena, I love you. I love your courage and your kindness and your stubborn independence. I love the way you see the world and the way you make me want to be better. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I don't want to change you or fix you or take care of you, David continued. I want to build a life with you. As equals. As partners. As two people who choose each other every day. David opened the ring box. Will you marry me? Elena looked at the ring, then at David, then back at the ring. For a moment, David was terrified that she would say no. It's perfect, Elena said. It's exactly what I would have chosen. Is that a yes? Elena laughed through her tears. Yes, David. Of course it's yes. David slipped the ring onto Elena's finger, and she held up her hand to look at it. I can't believe this is real, she said. It's real, David said. We're real. Elena kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When did you know? Elena asked. When did you know you wanted to marry me? David thought about it. I think I knew the first night we talked. When you said you believed in real love, the kind where people see each other clearly and choose to stay anyway. I wanted to be someone worth staying for. You are, Elena said. You always were. You just needed to believe it yourself. They sat on the bench holding hands and watching the world go by. Parents pushing children on swings, teenagers playing basketball, an elderly couple feeding ducks by the pond. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, but David thought it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. I have something to tell you, Elena said. What? I've been saving money. For a wedding. I know that sounds presumptuous, but I hoped this would happen someday, and I wanted to be able to pay for my own dress and flowers. David laughed. Of course you have. How much have you saved? $800, Elena said proudly. Elena, we can afford. I know we can afford anything. But I want this to be ours, not just yours. I want to contribute. David kissed her forehead. Okay. We'll plan a wedding that costs $800. Really? Really? As long as you're there, I don't care about anything else. Elena smiled. I love you, David Chin. I love you too, Elena. David paused. I don't actually know your last name. Elena laughed. Rodriguez. Elena Rodriguez. I love you, Elena Rodriguez. Soon to be Elena Chin if you want. I do want, Elena said. But maybe Elena Rodriguez Chin. I want to keep part of who I was while becoming someone new. Perfect, David said. As the sun set over the city, David and Elena made plans for their future. A small wedding with their closest friends and family. A honeymoon spent volunteering at a literacy program in another state. A life built on love and respect and the courage to be real with each other. It wasn't the fairy tale David had imagined when he was younger. It was better. It was real. 2 years later, David would look back on this day as the moment his real life began. Not when he made his first million or his first billion, but when he asked a woman who had lost everything to share everything with him, and she said yes. Elena kept her promise to take things slow, to build her own life, to be independent and strong. But she also kept her promise to be brave enough to love and be loved. And David kept his promise to see her clearly and choose her anyway, every single day. The boy who had grown up poor and afraid had become a man who understood that the greatest wealth was having someone to share your life with. Someone who saw through your money and your mistakes to the person you really were. Someone who made you want to be better not because you weren't good enough, but because love made you brave enough to try. In the end, it wasn't money that saved David Chin. It was a woman standing in the rain who taught him that sometimes the best things in life come disguised as the worst. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters. And sometimes love finds you when you're not even looking for it, in the form of someone who needs help but ends up helping you instead. The billionaire had found his happy ending, but it wasn't the ending he had expected. It was better. It was real. And it was just the beginning. 5 years later, David stood in the backyard of their small house, watching Elena teach their 4-year-old daughter how to plant tomatoes. The house wasn't fancy, just a 3-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood with good schools. Elena had insisted they didn't need a mansion, and David had learned that she was right about most things. "Daddy, look," their daughter called out, holding up a tiny seedling. "Mama says this will grow big tomatoes." "That's right, Sophie," David said, walking over to join them. "If you take good care of it." Sophie Rodriguezchen had her mother's dark eyes and her father's stubborn streak. She was smart and funny and completely unimpressed by the fact that her daddy was rich. To her, he was just the man who read her bedtime stories and made pancakes on Sunday mornings. "Are you excited about the party tomorrow?" Elena asked Sophie. "Yes." "Will there be cake?" "Lots of cake," David said, lifting Sophie onto his shoulders. "It's a very special party." Tomorrow was the 5th anniversary of the Chin Foundation, and they were having a celebration. Not a fancy gala this time, but a picnic in the park for all the families the foundation had helped over the years. There would be games for the kids, food trucks, and speeches from people whose lives had been changed. Elena was 7 months pregnant with their second child, a boy they planned to name James. When she had suggested the name, David had been surprised. "Are you sure?" he had asked. "I'm sure," Elena had said. "I want our son to know that love doesn't end when someone dies. It becomes part of the love we give to new people." David had cried that night, holding Elena and feeling grateful for a woman who could honor her past while building their future. As they worked in the garden, David thought about how much their lives had changed. Elena had finished her counseling degree and now worked part-time at the school, helping children deal with loss and trauma. David ran his foundation full-time and had started a small nonprofit that provided emergency funds for medical bills. They lived simply but comfortably, and they were happier than David had ever imagined possible. "David," Elena said, sitting back on her heels, "I have something to tell you." "What?" "I got a call today from the city. They want to offer me a job." David felt his stomach tighten. "What kind of job?" "Director of Family Services. It would mean overseeing all the programs that help families in crisis. It's a big job, but it's exactly what I've been training for." David looked at his wife, her hands covered in soil, her belly round with their second child, her eyes bright with excitement and worry. "Do you want it?" he asked. "I think I do. But it would mean long hours sometimes. Travel. More responsibility." "Elena, you should take it," David said. "You'd be amazing at it." "Really? You wouldn't mind me being away more?" David knelt beside her in the dirt. "5 years ago I thought love meant keeping people close and safe. But you taught me that real love means helping people become who they're meant to be, even if it's scary." Elena kissed him, tasting like sunshine and possibilities. "I love you, David Chin." "I love you too, Elena Rodriguezchen." That evening, after Sophie was asleep, David and Elena sat on their back porch talking about the future. The city job would be challenging, but it was a chance for Elena to make a real difference in people's lives. "There's something else," Elena said. "If I take this job, I want to start a program for families dealing with addiction. I want to help people who are going through what James and I went through." David took her hand. "That sounds perfect. It won't be easy. There will be people who don't want help. People who blame their families for their problems. People who think addiction is a choice instead of a disease. But there will also be people who need to hear that it's not their fault. People who need to know they can survive losing someone they love." Elena nodded. "People like me. People like both of us," David said. "We've both lost people we loved. We've both made mistakes. We've both learned that the only way through pain is through it, not around it." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of their neighborhood. Kids playing in nearby yards, someone mowing their lawn, a dog barking in the distance. Ordinary sounds of ordinary people living ordinary lives. "Do you ever miss it?" Elena asked. "The excitement of building a business? The thrill of making money?" David thought about it. "Sometimes I miss the challenge. But I don't miss the fear. I don't miss feeling like I had to prove myself every day." "What do you love most about your life now?" David looked at their small house with its vegetable garden and children's toys scattered on the porch. "I love that it's real. I love that when I come home, you're happy to see me because I'm me, not because of what I can give you. I love that Sophie thinks I'm the best daddy in the world because I play with her, not because I buy her things." Elena smiled. "She does think you're pretty great. What about you? Any regrets?" "None," Elena said without hesitation. "My life is nothing like I planned, but it's everything I wanted." The next day the foundation picnic was a huge success. Hundreds of people came, families who had been helped by the foundation, volunteers, other nonprofit workers, city officials. David watched Elena move through the crowd, talking to everyone, making connections, solving problems. She was in her element and David felt proud watching her work. "Mr. Chin?" A young woman approached him. "I'm Jessica. The foundation helped my family 2 years ago when my dad lost his job." "I remember," David said. "How is everyone doing?" "Great. Dad found a new job and I just started college. I wanted to thank you." "You don't need to thank me," David said. "Thank Elena. This was all her idea." David watched Jessica walk over to Elena and introduce herself. He saw Elena's face light up as she heard how well the family was doing. This was why they did the work, not for recognition or praise but for moments like this. Near the end of the party, David was asked to give a speech. He stood in front of the crowd holding Sophie with Elena beside him. "5 years ago I thought I was successful," David said. "I had money and power and everything I thought I wanted. But I was lonely and scared and empty inside." The crowd was quiet, listening. "Then I met a woman who changed everything. Not because she needed my help, but because she helped me remember who I wanted to be. She showed me that real success isn't about what you have, but about who you love and how you help others." David looked at Elena, who was crying and smiling at the same time. "The Chin Foundation exists because Elena taught me that when life knocks you down, you have 2 choices. You can stay down and feel sorry for yourself, or you can get up and help other people who are down too. We chose to get up." The crowd applauded, but David wasn't finished. "I want to announce something today. Elena has been offered a job as Director of Family Services for the city, and she's going to take it. This means she'll be helping even more families and I couldn't be prouder of her." More applause. Elena wiped her eyes and waved to the crowd. "And one more thing," David said. "In 4 months we're going to welcome a new member to our family. A little boy we're naming James, after someone who taught us both about love and loss and the courage to keep going." The crowd cheered and David kissed Elena while Sophie clapped from his arms. Later that night, after all the guests had gone home and Sophie was asleep, David and Elena cleaned up their backyard. It had been a perfect day, but David felt emotional thinking about how far they had both come. "Elena," he said as they folded up the last table, "do you think we'll be happy 10 years from now? 20 years? Elena looked at him with the same clear, honest eyes that had captivated him that rainy night 5 years ago. "I think we'll be different people 10 years from now," she said. "We'll have new challenges and new joys and new things to learn about each other. But yes, I think we'll be happy. Because we're not trying to be perfect. We're just trying to be real." David pulled her close, careful of her pregnant belly. "I love our real life." "So do I," Elena said. "Even the messy parts. Especially the messy parts." As they walked into their house, David thought about the young man he used to be. The one who thought money could fix everything and that love was too risky to try. That man had been successful by the world's standards, but he had been living half a life. Now David was living a whole life. A life with meaning and purpose and love that wasn't afraid of being tested. A life that had room for grief and joy, for mistakes and forgiveness, for ordinary moments that felt extraordinary because they were shared with the right person. The billionaire who had needed a date to his ex's wedding had found something he wasn't even looking for. He had found home. Not a place but a person. Someone who saw him clearly and chose to stay, who challenged him to be better while loving him exactly as he was. And in their small house with its vegetable garden and children's laughter, David Chin had finally learned what it meant to be truly wealthy. It had nothing to do with money and everything to do with love that was brave enough to be real. The story that had started with a man afraid to face his past alone ended with a man excited to build his future with someone who had become his partner in every sense of the word. They had both learned that sometimes the best love stories don't begin with love at first sight, but with 2 broken people who are brave enough to heal together. And that was the most beautiful ending of all.